Pauline had everything most people could only dream of: wealth, power, and influence. She lived in a beautiful home, had the best clothes, and was always surrounded by people who were only interested in her money and connections. No one genuinely cared about her. Deep down, she felt lonely. People saw her wealth, but they didn't see her heart. One evening, as she sat by her grand window, gazing at the city lights, a thought crossed her mind. What if she left it all behind? What if she found someone who loved her for who she really was, not for her money or status? The idea gave her a glimmer of hope. Pauline decided to leave. She packed a small bag, dressed simply, and left behind her luxurious life. She moved to a quieter part of the city where no one knew her. She introduced herself as Pauline, a humble seamstress who made clothes for a living. She wanted to find peace, to be loved for who she was, not for what she had. One day, while running errands in the market, she met Fred. Fred was a hard-working man who sold fabrics. He was tall and had a warm smile that could light up any room. But his life hadn't been easy. His small business barely made enough money to cover his expenses, and he was struggling to get by. Still, he was determined and full of life. When Fred met Pauline, he was immediately drawn to her. She was kind and soft-spoken, always willing to listen, and that made him feel safe. For the first time, he could talk to someone without worrying about their intentions. Pauline, too, admired Fred's determination and honesty. He didn't know anything about her wealth or her past. He saw her for who she was now. They spent more and more time together, walking through the streets, sharing stories of their dreams, and laughing about small things. Over time, Pauline began to fall in love with Fred. She loved his hard-working nature, his genuine care for others, and the way he made her feel like she was important. She never told him the truth about her past, not because she didn't trust him, but because she wanted him to love her for who she was now, not for the life she had left behind. Fred, on the other hand, felt the same way about Pauline. He was drawn to her kindness and grace. They built a deep connection, and soon enough, Fred proposed to Pauline with a simple ring. It wasn't much, but to Pauline, it was everything. She said yes, and they married in a small, private ceremony, away from the glitz and glamour of her old life. Together, they started a new life. Fred worked hard to grow his business, and he slowly began to make a name for himself. He was proud of what he was building, and Pauline stood by him, supporting him in every way she could. She helped him behind the scenes, using her wealth to pay off his debts and secure better deals for his business. She never told him, though she wanted him to feel proud of his own achievements. As Fred's business began to grow, so did his confidence. He started to gain new customers and earn more money than he ever thought possible. At first, he was grateful to Pauline. "You be my good luck charm," he would say, holding her close after a successful day. But as time passed, something changed. Fred began to think that all his success was because of his hard work alone. "I've worked so hard for this," he would say to his friends, not acknowledging the little support Pauline had given him, her advice, ideas, and sometimes cash, even though he was unaware of the huge support she gave his business behind his back. His focus shifted from his relationship with Pauline to his business. He began to spend more time with new people, attending parties and events, and less time with her. At first, Pauline didn't think much of it. She thought he was just busy with work. But soon, she realized that he was avoiding her. He stopped asking about her day, and when they did talk, it felt like he wasn't really listening. Some nights, he wouldn't come home at all. When she asked where he had been, he would shrug and say, "Just handling business." Pauline heard rumors around town about Fred being seen with other women at parties and dinners. It hurt, but she didn't say anything. She kept hoping that Fred would remember the love they had shared, that he would come back to her. But the nights grew longer, and Fred grew colder. He started staying out late, sometimes not coming home at all. One evening, Fred came home past midnight, smelling of perfume that wasn't haze. Pauline was sitting in the living room, waiting for him. When she saw him, her heart sank. "Where have you been?" she asked softly, trying to hide the hurt in her voice. Fred waved her off. "Don't start questioning me, Pauline. I'm tired," he snapped. Tears welled up in Pauline's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. She loved him deeply, but the man she had married seemed to be slipping away. Days turned into weeks, and Fred became more distant. He started to avoid her more and more. Whenever he went out, he never thought of taking her with him. Instead, he would bring one of his new girlfriends. Pauline stayed home, pretending not to care, but inside, she was falling apart. One evening, Fred's friend Jonathan noticed how different he had become. At a big party, Fred was laughing loudly with a young woman on his arm, while Jonathan watched from a distance. Jonathan couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Fred," Jonathan said, pulling him aside, "can we talk for a moment?" Fred frowned, but followed him to a quieter corner. "What's up, brother?" he asked. Jonathan shook his head. "What you're doing is wrong. You're married, Fred, but you're out here acting like you don't even have a wife. Pauline is at home, and you're parading around with women who don't care about you." Fred's face twisted in irritation. "Why do you care, Jonathan? Pauline's boring. She's too plain, too simple. She doesn't fit in with this life." Jonathan was shocked. "Pauline is the kindest, most selfless woman I've ever met. She stood by you when you had nothing. Fred, she's your wife. Don't forget that." Fred smirked. "If you like her so much, Jonathan, you can have her. She's all yours." Jonathan's mouth dropped open in disbelief. "What are you talking about? How can you say that about your own wife?" Fred shrugged. "She's a burden to me now. I don't need her anymore." Jonathan was disgusted. "You're blinded by your pride. One day, Fred, you'll regret this." Fred laughed. "Save your lectures, Jonathan. I'm doing just fine." That evening, Fred stormed into the house, slamming the door so hard that it shook the frame. Pauline, who had been folding clothes in the living room, looked up in surprise. "Fred, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice soft but full of concern. He pointed an accusing finger at her. "Don't act innocent with me, Pauline. I know you've been talking to Jonathan about our marriage." Pauline frowned. "What are you talking about? I haven't told Jonathan anything." Fred laughed bitterly. "Don't lie to me, Pauline. He came to me with all this nonsense about how I'm treating you. Who else would tell him if not you?" Pauline stood still, her heart heavy. "Fred, I haven't spoken to Jonathan. He probably noticed things on his own. You don't even try to hide it anymore." Fred waved her words away. "I don't care what you say. You've made me look like a fool in front of my friends. But guess what? I've had enough of this." Pauline's chest tightened. "Enough of what, Fred? What are you trying to say?" Fred turned to her, his face cold. "I'm saying that I'll soon bring my girlfriend into this house. She's classy, beautiful, and exactly the kind of woman I deserve. If you're tired of me, Pauline, you can pack your things and leave." Pauline's hand shook. She grabbed the back of the couch for support. "Fred, how can you say that? I'm your wife. I stood by you when you had nothing." Fred crossed his arms. "And I'm grateful for that. But let's face it, Pauline, you've let yourself go. You don't dress nicely anymore. You don't wear makeup, even when I buy you beautiful clothes. You just let them sit there. You don't even try to look good for me." Tears filled Pauline's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "Fred," she whispered, "what is it about those women that I don't have? What do they have that makes you treat me like this?" Fred laughed bitterly. "They're everything you're not, Pauline. They are confident, stylish, and exciting. You become boring, plain, ugly." Pauline gasped. "Ugly." The word echoed in her mind, stinging more than any insult. She had given up everything for him. Her wealth, her comfort, her dreams. And now, he was throwing it all back in her face. "Ugly," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Fred didn't care. "Sacrifices don't mean much if you can't keep up with my new life. I've outgrown you, Pauline. You either adapt or you leave. Simple." Pauline stared at him, her heart breaking. "Fred, you've forgotten who you are. And more than that, you've forgotten who I am." Fred rolled his eyes and grabbed his car keys. "I don't have time for this emotional nonsense. If you're tired, Pauline, pack your bags. You're free to leave." With that, he stormed out of the house, leaving Pauline standing there, shattered. Pauline sat on the couch, her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders shook as she cried quietly. Across from her was a friend Illa who watched her with sad eyes. Illa was a strong, wise woman who always spoke her mind. She stirred her cup of tea but didn't drink. "Pauline," Illa said firmly, shaking her head. "Look at you. You're tired. You're unhappy. And for what? A man who doesn't even care." Pauline wiped her eyes but didn't look up. "It's not that simple, Illa. You know I love him." Illa crossed her arms. "Love shouldn't make you cry like this. When was the last time you did something for yourself? You give Fred everything, your time, your love, even your money. And how does he repay you? By ignoring you, by making you feel small." Pauline's hands trembled. Illa's words hurt because they were true. She had spent years hoping Fred would change, hoping he would be the kind man she once knew. "You don't understand," Pauline whispered. "Fred wasn't always like this. He used to be good to me. I keep thinking that man will come back." Illa sighed. "And how long will you wait? How many chances will you give him? Pauline, you've done enough. He doesn't appreciate you. It's time to walk away." Pauline clenched her fists. She hated feeling weak, but Illa was right. Still, she wasn't ready to give up. "I have one last test for him," Pauline said firmly. "If he fails this time, I'll leave. I'll never look back." Illa raised an eyebrow. "Another test? He's failed everyone so far." "This one is different," Pauline said. "I need to know if there's any love left in him. If he fails, I'll know it's truly over." Illa shook her head but didn't argue. "Fine. Do what you must. But promise me one thing." "What?" Pauline asked. "Promise me that no matter what happens, you'll choose yourself. Stop putting Fred first. It's time you mattered too." Pauline gave a small, sad smile. "I promise." That evening, Fred burst into their small house, his face red with anger. He slammed the door so hard the walls shook. Pauline jumped, startled. She had been mending a torn shirt, but now her hands froze. "Fred? What's wrong?" she asked softly. Fred didn't answer. He threw his hat onto the table and turned to her, his eyes burning with rage. "Who is this rich woman you've been seen with?" he demanded. "Are you trying to leave me for someone better?" Pauline's heart pounded. Someone must have seen her with Illa. "Fred, that's my friend Illa. She took me to eat. She paid for the food." Fred laughed harshly. "Friend? A wealthy woman like that doesn't befriend someone like you. What are you really doing with her?" Pauline's chest tightened. "She's just a friend, Fred. She cares about me." Fred paced like a trapped animal. "Women like her don't care about people like us. So tell me the truth. What does she want from you?" Tears stung Pauline's eyes, but she refused to cry. "Illa likes me for who I am. She doesn't want anything." Fred sneered. "Who you are. Look at yourself. Pauline, you have no money, no fancy clothes. What could she possibly see in you?" His word cut deep, but Pauline stood her ground. "I've always been loyal to you, Fred. I've stood by you no matter what. And now, just because I have a friend, you accuse me of terrible things." Fred crossed his arms. "It's not about the friend. It's about you thinking you're better than you are. That woman is filling your head with nonsense." Pauline took a slow breath. "Illa treats me with respect. She doesn't insult me like you do." Fred's face darkened. "Don't turn this around on me. You're forgetting your place. You're nothing without me." Pauline's mouth fell open. She stared at him, shocked. "If that's what you believe," she whispered, "then maybe you've forgotten everything I've done for you." Fred waved his hand. "I don't have time for this. I'm leaving. Think about what's really important while I'm gone." Without another word, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Pauline sank back onto the couch, her chest heaving with silent sobs. His words replayed in her mind, each one heavier than the last. But as she wiped away her tears, a spark of determination lit within her. She had given Fred everything, but it was clear he had no idea who she truly was. One thing was certain, his time to learn the truth was fast approaching. Fred had been waiting for a breakthrough in his business for years. His one small company was finally gaining traction, but the big contract he had been dreaming of still felt just out of reach. Day after day, He prayed for an opportunity that would take him to the top, and one ordinary afternoon, the call finally came. His phone rang loudly, breaking the silence of his office. Fred grabbed it quickly, his heart racing. "Hello, is this Mr. Fred?" a deep, confident voice asked. "Yes, this is Fred speaking," he replied, sitting up straight in his chair. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm calling to inform you that you've been shortlisted for the contract with the royal family," the man said. "It's the opportunity you've been waiting for." Fred froze, barely believing his ears. This was a deal he had dreamed of, a deal big enough to change his life forever. "Are you serious?" he asked, his voice trembling with excitement. "Very serious," the man replied. "Congratulations, sir. However, there's one final step. The king's first daughter, the princess, will need to personally approve and sign the contract. She has requested to meet you, but there's one condition. You must bring your wife along." Fred's heart sank slightly at the mention of his wife. He forced a smile through the phone. "Of course, that's no problem at all." "Great," the man said. "The meeting is in 3 days. Please come prepared." When the call ended, Fred sat still for a moment, his thoughts racing. He should have been thrilled, but instead, he was filled with worry. He couldn't picture Pauline attending such an important meeting. She didn't fit the image he wanted to portray. Her plain clothes and simple demeanor were far from the glamorous partner he imagined walking into the royal estate with. Then an idea popped into his head. Veronica, he muttered under his breath. Veronica, his girlfriend, was everything he thought a successful man's wife should look like: glamorous, stylish, and confident. She was the perfect person to impress the princess, no doubt. Fred called Veronica. "Hello, Fred," Veronica answered, her voice smooth as silk. "Babe, I have some amazing news." Fred grinned, his voice bubbling with excitement. "I just got the chance to land the contract of my dreams." "That's wonderful, darling," Veronica said. "How can I help you celebrate?" Fred lowered his voice slightly. "Well," he said, "there's one thing I need. I need you to pretend to be my wife for the signing meeting. It's a royal contract, and I have to bring someone impressive." Veronica laughed. "Oh, darling, you are so naughty. Of course, I will do it. Anything for you. Just tell me what to wear. Something stunning." Fred grinned. "I'll take care of it. Don't worry." Later that evening, Fred came home, his excitement barely hidden. Pauline was in the living room, knitting a scarf. She looked up at him with a warm smile. "You look happy," she said. "What's the good news?" Fred hesitated. "Oh, it's nothing. Just had a good day at work," he lied, waving her question away. Pauline frowned slightly. "Fred, it's been a while since you came home this happy. Are you sure it's nothing big?" Fred forced a laugh. "Just business stuff, Pauline. You wouldn't understand." Pauline's smile faltered, but she didn't press further. She had grown used to Fred brushing her off when it came to important matters. Over the next few days, Fred prepared for the meeting with the princess. He bought a brand new suit and a fancy tie. He also made sure Veronica had the perfect dress to wear. The morning of the meeting arrived. Fred left the house early, telling Pauline he had to attend an important work event. She watched him drive away, her heart heavy with worry. Fred arrived at Veronica's apartment, his heart pounding with excitement. She stepped out in a stunning gold dress, her hair perfectly styled and her makeup flawless. She looked exactly how Fred wanted the world to see him, a man with class and sophistication. "You look amazing," Fred said, his eyes shining. "I always do," Veronica replied with a sly smile as she slid into the passenger seat of his car. As they drove to the royal meeting, Fred felt unstoppable. This was the moment he had been waiting for, and he believed he had planned everything perfectly. Fred stepped into the grand royal hall, his heart pounding with excitement. The palace was magnificent, with high ceilings, glittering chandeliers, and walls adorned with gold. Veronica clung to his arm, looking around in awe. "This place is beyond beautiful. I feel like a queen already," she whispered. Fred gave a confident smile, though his palms were sweating. This was the moment he had been waiting for, a chance to secure the contract of a lifetime. He believed his plan was flawless. As they were ushered into the meeting room, the king sat at the head of a long, ornate table, his presence commanding and regal. Fred bowed deeply, feeling slightly intimidated. "Your Majesty," Fred greeted, his voice steady but full of respect. "It's an honor to be here." The king nodded. "Welcome, Mr. Fred. I've heard great things about your business. I understand you've worked hard to get here." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Fred said, his chest swelling with pride. The king's eyes then shifted to Veronica, standing beside Fred. "And who is this with you?" the king asked. Fred hesitated for the briefest moment before forcing a smile. "This is my wife," he said confidently. The king's eyebrows raised slightly, and his tone sharpened. "Your wife? Are you sure?" Fred's smile faltered. "Yes, Your Majesty. She is my wife," he repeated, trying to sound convincing. The king studied Veronica for a long moment before repeating, "This is your wife?" "Yes," Fred replied, his palms beginning to sweat. The king said nothing but leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable as Fred presented his business proposal. The king interrupted him twice, asking, "Are you sure this is your wife?" Fred's frustration grew, but he kept a polite smile. "Yes, Your Majesty, I assure you, this is my wife." The king exchanged a knowing glance with one of the royal advisers, but said nothing more. Fred grew more uneasy with each passing minute, but he forced himself to focus. After finishing his presentation, Fred cleared his throat and asked cautiously, "Your Majesty, may I ask when the princess will be joining us? I was told she would sign the contract." The king gave a small smile. "Patience, Mr. Fred. She will be here shortly. Please wait." Minutes turned into an hour, and Fred grew restless. He whispered to Veronica, "Where is she? This is taking too long." Finally, the doors swung open, and everyone turned to see who it was. Fred stood up, his heart racing, expecting to see a royal stranger. But his jaw dropped when he saw Pauline walk into the room, dressed in a breathtaking gown, her hair styled perfectly, and her posture regal. She walked with confidence, her head held high, and every step she took seemed to echo in Fred's ears. "Pauline," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Meet my daughter, Princess Pauline," the king announced with pride. Fred felt the ground shift beneath him. His legs wobbled, and he clung to the edge of the table for support. "Princess," he repeated, his mind racing. Veronica's eyes widened as she looked between Fred and Pauline in shock. "What's going on?" she hissed. Pauline walked straight to her father, ignoring Fred entirely. She greeted him warmly before finally turning to Fred with an expression that was a mixture of hurt and disappointment. "So, Fred," she said, her voice calm but cutting, "you must be surprised." Fred stammered, "Pauline, I didn't know." Pauline interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "I thought you were different. I thought you loved me for who I was, not for what I had." "Pauline, please, let me explain," Fred pleaded. "I can explain everything." Pauline raised her hand, silencing him. "Explain what? What is there to explain? Fred, you lied about who you were. You disrespected me, and you replaced me with her," she said, glancing at Veronica. Veronica, feeling the heat, stood up angrily. "Fred, what is this? You told me your wife was just some boring, simple woman. You never said she was a princess." She grabbed her purse and glared at him. "You're pathetic." With that, Veronica stormed out of the room, leaving Fred humiliated. "Pauline, I'm sorry," Fred said desperately. "I made mistakes, but I can change. Please don't do this." Pauline's eyes filled with tears, but she stood firm. "I gave you everything, Fred. Every contract you've ever gotten, every opportunity. It was all me. I used my influence because I believed in you. But now I see I was wrong. You don't deserve it." She turned to her father and said, "Withdraw all the past contracts. I cannot trust him anymore." The king nodded, his expression grim. "Consider it done." Fred fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Pauline, please, I'll do anything. I was a fool. I was blinded by my own pride. Give me one more chance." But Pauline shook her head, her heart breaking. I loved you, Fred, but you took me for granted. You threw away the one person who truly cared about you. This is a consequence of your choices." As Fred sat there, broken and defeated, Pauline turned and walked out of the room, her dignity intact. For the first time, Fred realized the true meaning of love and loyalty and how he had destroyed it with his arrogance. Fred stumbled out to the palace, his mind spinning and his chest heavy with regret. The world around him seemed blurry, as if he had just woken up from a terrible nightmare. But this wasn't a dream. This was his reality, the life he had built, the success he had flaunted, the love he had betrayed. It was all gone. He sat in his car outside the palace gates, staring at the steering wheel, unable to move. The image of Pauline standing tall and proud, revealing her true identity, played over and over in his mind. The pain in her eyes, the disappointment in her voice, and the weight of her words crushed him. How could I have been so blind? Fred whispered to himself, tears streaming down his face. When he finally drove home, it was to an empty house. He tried to call Veronica, but her phone was switched off. He didn't bother at first. He was too consumed by his thoughts of Pauline. The next morning, Fred noticed something strange. His wallet, which he had mistakenly left in his car, was missing. He checked the drawers, the closet, and even his car, but it was gone. Veronica had sneaked in the previous night and taken some of his things. Panic set in as he checked his bank account. His savings, the little that remained after years of careless spending, were gone. No, this can't be happening. Fred gasped. He called Veronica's number repeatedly, but it was disconnected. She had taken everything he had left and disappeared without a trace. Fred sat on the floor, his head in his hands, as a realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He was broke. Over the next few weeks, Fred's life spiraled out of control. Without the contract that Pauline had once secretly secured for him, his business collapsed. His employees left one by one as he failed to pay their salaries. His phone rang nonstop with calls from investors demanding their money. Fred sold his car to cover his debts, then his furniture, and finally, the house itself. The once proud man who had strutted through life with arrogance now found himself homeless. He wandered the streets, carrying a single tattered bag with a few belongings he had left. The nights were cold, and the days felt endless. He often sat on park benches, watching people walk by, wondering how his life had crumbled so quickly. One rainy evening, as Fred huddled under a bridge for shelter, he thought about Pauline. He remembered the way she had cared for him, the way she had supported his dreams, and the way she had loved him unconditionally. "How did I throw it all away?" he whispered to himself, his voice shaking with emotion. Fred thought of the nights he had left Pauline alone to be with other women. He remembered the cruel words he had said to her, calling her ugly and classless. And now, here he was, with nothing. No money, no friends, and no one to love him. Fred continued to live on the streets for some time, but gradually he began to change. The man who had once been full of pride and arrogance started to understand the importance of humility. He realized that real success wasn't measured by how much money he had or how many people admired him. It was about integrity, love, and respect.